All right, let's talk about AI. We're going way beyond just seeing it as a brilliant conversationalist. Today, we're diving into how we can turn it into a powerful partner, one that can actually do stuff.
I mean, we all know an LLM can write a fantastic email, right? Or even a poem. But how do we get it to actually hit send, or go query a database, or update a customer's record? You see the gap? How do we get from just talking to actually doing? That's the huge question we're tackling today.
Well, it turns out there are basically two main ways to think about this, and the analogy is super helpful. On one side, you've got the playbook. Think of it as a detailed step-by-step script. Everything is planned out. And on the other side, you've got the improviser. This is the creative genius who thinks on their feet, adapting to whatever happens. These two characters, there are stand-ins for AI workflows and AI agents.
Okay, so let's kick things off with the structured approach, the one that gives us all that predictability and control we love. Let's talk about AI workflows.
So what is an AI workflow really? The best way to think about it is like a super detailed recipe, or a movie script. It's a system where we, the developers, lay out the exact sequence of events. The LLM and all its tools, they just follow the path we've built for them. No ad-libbing, no surprises. The whole thing is totally predictable because we wrote the code that way. And that's exactly what makes workflows so incredibly reliable. The steps are all laid out, right? So you get a ton of predictability and control. The tasks have these nice, clear boundaries, and all the logic is just hard-coded in. This is why they're absolute gold for production systems. When things just have to work the same way every single time.
Okay, so that's the theory. But what does this playbook look like in the real world? Let's check out a couple of the most common patterns you'll run into with AI workflows.
First up, we have something called prompt chaining. It's a beautifully simple idea, but it's so powerful. You just take a big, complex task and break it down into a series of smaller steps. The magic is, the output from step 1 becomes the input for step 2. Think about writing a huge report. Step 1, the AI generates an outline. Cool. Step 2, we have a different step that validates out outline. Looks good? Great. Step 3, another prompt expands each section. And finally, step 4 refines the whole thing. It's like a little assembly line for creating content.
All right, next up is a pattern called routing. Now, if prompt chaining is a straight highway, think of routing as a fork in the road. It's all about making a decision. Imagine a customer support bot. The first thing it does is classify what you're asking about. Is this a refund request or is it a technical question? Based on that answer, the workflow sends your request down a completely different path to a specialized process that's built just for that one thing. It's just super efficient.
Okay, so we've met our methodical, by-the-book character, the playbook. Now, let's meet the other star of the show, the flexible, dynamic, totally autonomous improviser. Welcome to the world of AI agents.
You see, an AI agent is a completely different animal. With an agent, the LLM isn't just following a script, it's writing the script as it goes along. It's in the driver's seat, deciding which tools it needs, in what order, to get the job done. The control is all its own. It's autonomous.
And this quote just nails it. The agent itself is the one calling the shots. It looks at the request, figures out the context, and then decides the best way to move forward. It's not just following some predefined rules we gave it, it's using its own reasoning power to figure out the plan.
So what's inside one of these agents? What makes it tick? Well, there are 4 really key parts. First, you need a reasoning engine. That's the LLM's brain, where all the decision-making happens. Then, it needs tool access, so it can actually interact with other systems. It also needs memory, right? So it can remember what it's already done and keep track of the conversation. And finally, the whole thing that makes it an agent. Autonomy, the power to just go and execute its plan without us holding its hand.
Okay, so we have our structured playbook and our free-form improviser. They seem like total opposites, don't they? But what's the secret sauce? What's the one piece of tech that connects the AI's brain to the real world and actually powers both of them?
The answer, and this is so important, is something called tool calling. This is the fundamental mechanism. It's the bridge that lets a language model stop just talking and start doing. It really is the engine under the hood for both workflows and agents.
And tool calling is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's the ability for an LLM to, well, call a tool, like an external function or an API. So when a model needs to know today's weather, or search your company's database, or send a Slack message, it uses tool calling to make that happen. This is the magic step that turns a simple chatbot into a seriously capable assistant. Now, to help us get our heads around all the different kinds of tools out there, we can sort them into a simple three-pillar framework. Pillar number 1 is all about data access. Think of these as read-only tools. They're just for gathering information, searching a database, calling an API to get some data, reading a file. The key here is that they're safe. They're not changing anything.
Pillar 2 is where things get interesting. Computation tools. So you've gathered some data with Pillar 1 tools. Now what? Well, you usually need to do something with it. This pillar is all about processing and transforming that data. Maybe it's running some calculations, converting a file format, or even calling another AI model to do something specific, like sentiment analysis. This is where you turn raw info into useful insights.
And that brings us to the third and final pillar, action tools. Okay, this is the big one. This is where the AI actually makes a change in the real world. We're talking about tools that send emails, update records, or even process payments. The critical thing to remember here is that these actions have real consequences. You can't unsend an email, you know? This is the pillar where you need to be the most careful and have the most control.
Okay, so now we get the what and the how. We've got our playbook and our improviser. We know they're both powered by tool calling. So that brings us to the most practical question of all. When do you use which one? When is it time for the structured playbook? And when should you let the improviser do its thing?
This little table here lays it all out perfectly, a great side-by-side. You can see with workflows, everything is predefined, hard-coded, and orchestrated. It's fixed. And with agents, it's the total opposite: dynamic, LLM-driven, self-selected, and flexible. It really just sums up the whole difference in a nutshell.
So, when do you reach for the playbook? Simple. You go with a workflow when your task is super clear and isn't going to change much. When predictability and reliability are everything, and I'm talking especially in a production system, if you need to have complete control over every single step, a workflow is absolutely the way to go.
And when do you call on the improviser? Well, you unleash an agent when tasks are more open-ended, maybe a little messy or exploratory. When you can't possibly define every single step ahead of time. When you need the system to be flexible and adapt to a bunch of different variables, and when that kind of human-like reasoning is a plus, that's where an agent is just going to shine.
So the big question is it always this black and white choice, the rigid playbook versus the freeform improviser? Well, what we're seeing in the most powerful, most sophisticated systems out there is that the answer is a big no.
The real magic, it turns out, is in combining them. You can build these amazing hybrid systems. You use a workflow for all the reliable, predictable parts of a job, but then, at a certain point, you hand off the tricky parts to an agent to figure out. Imagine a workflow that hits a really complex problem, and its job is just to route it to a specialized agent. You get the best of both worlds, rock-solid structure and incredible flexibility, all working together.
And that really leaves us with the key takeaway. It's not about choosing between the playbook and the improviser. It's about learning to be a great director. Someone who knows exactly when to stick to the script and when to let your star actor just improvise. So the question I want to leave you with is this: how are you going to orchestrate that perfect balance between structure and autonomy to build the next generation of truly incredible AI?